Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast. Now, for new listeners that don't know my backstory, way back in 2014, 2015, I was an IT manager by day and tech writer by night. And when I first started writing on LinkedIn, when they released their new blogging platform, a small group of strangers from all over the world began supporting each other. Despite the thousands of miles separating everybody, it quickly turned into this small community where everybody helped and supported each other's work with likes, shares and comments, and putting engagement before page views. So for me personally, John White, Heather Younger, Sarah Elkins, Larry Boyer, Arnie McInnes, Paul Drury, and a long list of extraordinary people that all selflessly supported each other's work, was creating fantastic opportunities for so many people. And in 2015, I was awarded a LinkedIn Top Voice Award as the #2 tech writer on the topic of technology across the entire LinkedIn platform. So, predictably, that moment changed my life and the reason that I'm sat in this chair talking to you now. But, and I think this is the most important thing to remember, it was those people who I had never met but created their own virtual community that proved that anything is possible and played a big part in that success. And Sarah Elkins realised these valuable relationships that she built on LinkedIn were now more powerful and more meaningful than all those physical conferences that she's attended, and where you typically leave with a conference hangover when you return into the office Monday morning with great ideas and then quickly revert to the old way of doing things. So Sarah then decided to take this huge leap of faith and risk financial loss by organising the No More Virtual Conference, where essentially she asked her virtual LinkedIn connections to attend this physical conference, and the response is nothing short of inspiring. She has taken this concept of connecting beyond the keyboard and ensuring that her connections are no longer just virtual to another level. Because people have travelled from all over the world to attend her workshops in Denver, Atlanta, and this year in Chicago. So here I am in Chicago for the No Longer Virtual event 2020. And I want to learn more from Sarah herself and also the story behind the event, and also from real attendees to learn more about the value that they are getting by attending No Longer Virtual and connecting beyond the keyboard. So come with me all the way to Chicago so we can speak with Sarah and the attendees live at No Longer Virtual in Chicago.
I started No Longer Virtual. It was because I had been learning so much online from some of my closest connections, Karthik Rajan, you, Chris Spurvey, Heather Younger, Dustin McKisson, and John White. I was learning so much from this group online, and I know that face-to-face, I could increase that learning by a dramatic increase. I couldn't even imagine how much more I could learn from them if I met face-to-face with them. And I also realized that nobody would get together for just a meetup. They wouldn't fly across the country or from overseas just for a meetup. I knew that there had to be a solid agenda of learning and professional development to get people together. And what really inspired No Longer Virtual and this conference almost 4 years ago, well, just over 4 years ago, was knowing that learning face-to-face was absolutely the most effective form of learning.
And if you're sat next to somebody on a plane and you're telling them that you've created this event and what you're doing and what you're looking forward to, how would you describe No Longer Virtual to someone that's never heard of it before?
You know, that's been kind of a struggle from the beginning.
Yeah.
The way that I've been describing it is that it's a summit that brings in professionals from every different part of industry government to private to startups to entrepreneurial. I describe the people that come to No Longer Virtual as people with an entrepreneurial mindset. So that doesn't necessarily mean that they're entrepreneurs or that they're self-employed, but it means that they think in terms of innovation and growth, whether that's personal or professional. So the way that I describe No Longer Virtual is a coming together of professionals with entrepreneurial mindsets to learn together and to create a network of supportive and encouraging professionals.
Since you had that idea and you've brought it to life, you've now enabled people from all over the world to connect beyond the keyboard in Atlanta, Denver, and now Chicago. But what are you most proud of if you look back at all those events?
Let me just tell a quick story about what I'm most proud of. The first year that we did it, everyone was in the room from about 8 in the morning until about 6 that evening with an hour and a half break for lunch. So we had spent all day together, and it was really important to me when I was creating the concept and the structure to leave plenty of space for people who were more introverted. So I didn't make any plans for dinner that Thursday night. I really wanted to leave space so people wouldn't feel compelled or obligated to go do one more thing together after spending the whole day learning together. So at the very end, it was about 6 o'clock. We had gone over a little bit because Dustin McKisson's session was so funny, along with John White. And I was giving housekeeping announcements about the next day, what to expect. And I mentioned that my husband and I were planning to go to a Chinese restaurant about a block away because we had gotten a recommendation from some hotel staff. And I asked for a show of hands of anybody who might want to join us because I wanted to give the restaurant a heads up if it was going to be a larger group. And I was really anticipating maybe 8 hands to go up. So when I said, could you show me your hands if you think you want to join us? I was honestly a little bit overwhelmed when almost every hand went up in that room. And 21 out of 23 of us went out to dinner together that evening. And the only reason the other people didn't go out to dinner with us was because they had made other plans to connect with some other people that they knew from that area. So I remember that feeling of all these people not wanting the day to end. They just didn't want the day to end. And that, to me, was a huge indication of the success of the day. It felt a little more stressful because I was thinking about the next day and wanting it to be just as good, but it was a powerful moment for me. And then this past year in Atlanta in 2019, at the very end of it, I made an announcement that in the next few weeks, I would be accepting $100 deposits, non-refundable deposits, to hold space for this year that's taking place in Chicago. I didn't have a date. I didn't have a location. And as soon as I sent out that announcement to the attendees and alumni from the previous 3 No Longer Virtual events, I had a dozen non-refundable deposits come in almost immediately. And to me, what that means is that people who attended found incredible value in it, that there was a return on investment that was hard to quantify in most cases, but clearly something that was meaningful to the people who attended this conference. And I don't think I've ever had an experience like that where a majority or even half of the conference attendees immediately wanted to know about the next year's conference and plan for it.
What a great story. And I know it's probably too early for you to answer this because you're fully wrapped up and enjoying this year's event, but what excites you about the future?
Well, what I really love about No Longer Virtual is that it shifts every year. It's a little different every year. And I'm excited to see what kind of structure the group comes up with for the next few years. I'm already considering limiting it to even fewer people. Right now, we limit it to 50 people to make sure that people can really, truly connect. But now, as I visualize it, and I think about the number of people that were there last year, which was 38, I kind of think maybe 38 is a really good number. 40 is a really good number, because it seemed like everyone had an opportunity to meet everyone else in the room, at least for a few minutes. And I've never ever experienced a conference like that, where you could meet and get to know almost every single person in the room. So what I'm really excited about for the future is to see where the group itself takes No Longer Virtual, because it grows every year, and it grows in myth status, I guess, every year. And every year people say, oh, I can't wait for next year. So that's what excites me about the future for No Longer Virtual.
And for anybody listening that would like to be a part of this next year, I know it's a long way off, but so they can read more about it and see all the takeaways that people have and value that they've gained from this year's event, and they want to go next year, what's the best way of keeping up to speed with developments there?
Well, I would suggest, first of all, going to elkinsconsulting.com and looking at the No Longer Virtual menu so that you can see what's going on in Chicago this year. You can see the agenda and the accommodations and travel page. And then if you do a search for hashtag NLV Chicago 2020, you'll see all of the posts and information that have gone on prior to this upcoming event next week. And also afterward, we'll be using that hashtag to share our takeaways and excitement and, I guess, motivation for next year.
Well, I always say at the end of every episode that technology works best when it brings people together. But what you've created here is the epitome of that. And it's not something I can say very often on these Daily Tech podcasts. So I will be joining you next year. So if anyone listening that would like to sit there with both of us and the other 40 people, it would be great to meet them. But more than anything, just a big thank you for sharing your story with me again today.
Thank you, Neil.
Now, after speaking with Sarah about the power of No Longer Virtual, I wanted to grab a few people as they were leaving the event and just ask them why they attended and what they got from attending No Longer Virtual. They weren't expecting it, and I just wanted to grab their feelings as they were leaving to see just how powerful connecting beyond the keyboard had been for them. So here are a few voice clips of people that I caught as they were leaving No Longer Virtual.
I'm Arlene Mendoza from California, and I work on an innovation, building innovation, scaling innovation at the intersect of policy, data, technology in the government space.
So where did you hear about NLV?
From Sarah Elkins, and I actually reached out to her last year because her podcasts really inspire me, and I said thank you, and she and I had a conversation that never ended, which resulted in me saying yes to NLV.
And what did you take away from No Longer Virtual when you're on that plane ride home? What are you going to be thinking about?
Connection. I think that connection through vulnerability and connection through authentic conversation, the people, 100%, the willingness to give and the willingness to ask, and all of us to collectively share in what we know, who we know, and all the resources we have for each other.
I'm the CEO of Uchi LLC. Uchi is an app that helps people connect more authentically with those who matter most to them.
And where did you hear about No Longer Virtual?
I first heard about it, somehow I came across Sarah Elkins on LinkedIn, and she invited me to be a guest on her podcast, and then she told me about NLV, and I thought, oh, okay, this is something that sounds pretty interesting, and I'm all about connection. And then I did a mini session at the first NLV, and it went over really well, and I just loved how warm and supportive the entire group was, and that's what really brought me back to this year. In addition, Sarah invited me to present on a full session this year on emotional health and connection and relationships.
And it does feel like the world's a crazy place at the moment with the coronavirus fears and events being cancelled everywhere. What made you still want to attend?
Oh, it was a no-brainer. I mean, I understand infection control. I have a background in infectious disease as well. So I know the risk really isn't that bad. The virus isn't really that bad. So I knew, hey, I'm going to this conference. This conference means a lot to me. If I only went to one conference the whole year, the NLV would be the one I would attend.
And when you're on the plane ride home, what will you be thinking about? What will you be taking home?
Oh my gosh, all the different conversations I had with basically every attendee this year, and how I want to follow up with them and work with them, help them, and have them help me, with my business as well.
So, Amy, what does NLV mean to you?
NLV to me is all about the people and the relationship. So that's what drew me here in the first year of its existence, and this is what keeps me coming back. And that's what I'm taking away, are the relationships, enhanced, new, old, all the same. It always comes down to the people.
Years ago, I was in a place where I didn't feel like I had that good a group to hang out with. And so I discovered LinkedIn, and I started seeing these same names popping up. One of them, like the main one that popped up for me, was James Altucher.
Yeah.
And so listening to him and reading his stuff and all that. But then another one that kept popping up was Sarah Elkins, and my last name's Elkin. I'm like, that looks familiar, and so it was just one of those things where familiarity, so I started following Sarah, and that's how I found all these other people and all this network of people. And so after several years of knowing Sarah and her just kind of nudging me and other people nudging me, that's how I found out about No Longer Virtual. And that's why I'm here.
And what are you going to be taking away from the event when you're on that plane ride home? What are you going to be thinking about?
That perfection is the enemy of good, and that, action beats perfection. That's the first one. The second one is that I'm not alone. Yeah. I'm not by myself going through this journey, to write more, talk about leadership. There's a lot of people out here that have done what I'm doing. It's pretty cool about No Longer Virtual is that I ran into people who are like me, wanting to do some of the stuff I want to do, and then I ran into people who've done it, who've been there, done that, and their business is good. Now they want to scale it, so they're talking about scaling and going bigger, and so it's these different paths or these different stops along the same journey. It's very interesting to me, and it's something that finding this community has just been a godsend.
So, Hannah, why did you attend NLV?
Well, this is my third time attending, and there was no way I was going to miss this one, because this has been one of the most meaningful gathering of professionals that I've ever experienced.
And what will you be taking away on that long journey home?
Well, I have a bag full of email addresses. I'm gonna send some personal notes to people that have impacted me during this few days. In terms of content, there's a lot of processing to do, but more connection, how to do connection more meaningfully with people, how to create that environment where people feel seen and heard and understood, and how I can take that both into my professional life to an even greater extent, and also into my personal life.
So, Heather, can you tell me a little bit about who you are and what you do?
I am a keynote speaker and employee engagement consultant and TEDx speaker.
So what brought you to NLV this year? What made you come here?
Well, you being one person. All of the people is the reason why I come back. I mean, I learn when I'm here, of course, but it's secondary to the connections and the people that are here.
And what will you be taking away from the event on that plane ride home?
There are two things. One is to take more time and space for myself, something one of my close friends shared with me today. And then the other thing is to try to connect more, at a time, nothing else gets in the way, just connecting eye to eye with the people that I love in my own house.
So why did you attend NLV, and what made you not cancel because of the coronavirus?
I've been to NLV every single year. It is my favorite connection space. It's not even a conference, and the relationships that I get out of this every single year are just worth it. The world is a crazy place, so if I can get good people, connect with good people out of that, then it's all worth it.
And what will you be taking home from the event? What will you be thinking about on that plane home?
So every year after NLV, I kind of do a debrief in my own head, and I have this really long list of things that I want to do, because what it does is it inspires me. It gives me all kinds of enthusiasm for all these things. For the next couple of days, I'm going to be paring that to-do list down, because I always have way more things on there, that are humanly possible to do. So I'm going to do the best I can.
So at this year's No Longer Virtual, Sarah Elkins once again revealed that her secret power was getting people to do things that they wouldn't usually do. And as the world went crazy and travel bans became the norm, I hopped on a plane to travel 3,700 miles to connect beyond the keyboard in Chicago. But I wasn't alone. There was a room full of people that had travelled far and wide to learn from their online connections. And this is the event's biggest strength, because NLV enables a group of people from all over the world to connect beyond the keyboard. And as someone who is passionate about sharing and learning from stories of others on my podcast and use technology to bring people together, it was easy to see why I'm so attracted to the event. And kudos to Sarah, who took a significant risk in creating this event and faced the pressures of planning something like this with international attendees during an unprecedented crisis. But still, against all the odds, and despite the vast majority of events being cancelled around the world, she was still able to fill a room full of people that intimately shared their stories of success and failures and helped everybody learn from each other. And for me, that is genuinely priceless and incredibly special. And as someone that covers tech events and attends conferences all over the world, it was being surrounded by this eclectic, smart group of open and fun people that left me feeling both inspired and empowered in equal measure. So I will return to next year's No Longer Virtual, where I'll be the guy with a big beaming smile, excited to be there once again, and sharing and learning from other people and their journeys and their story. And I hope maybe you'll consider joining me, and maybe I will be speaking to you in one of those voice clips next year, wherever Sarah chooses to host NLV next year. But it's time for me to fly back to the UK now, so remember, you can email me directly, techblogwriter@outlook.com. My website is techblogwriter.co.uk. If you need anything at all, if you'd like to talk with me, come on the podcast. If you have a question, if you want to find out more about NLV, whatever it is, I'm the easiest guy in the world to find. So all that's left for me to say is a big thank you for listening. And until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.